Mojao, welcome to our channel. Today, we bring you a powerful and dramatic story that will make you feel angry, satisfied, and completely hooked from start to finish. This is the story of a black CEO, a brilliant woman leader who was insulted and disrespected at a car dealership simply because of prejudice and appearances. But what no one expected was her shocking response just minutes later. She bought the entire showroom. Across 8 chapters filled with unexpected details, you'll witness the arrogance of salesmen, the cold stares of other customers, and the breathtaking moment when a black CEO turned humiliation into triumph. If you want a story that's both dramatic and deeply inspiring, this video is for you. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next thrilling episodes. That morning, the sun was blazing across the massive parking lot of one of the city's most luxurious car dealerships. Sleek sedans, towering SUVs, and roaring coupes stood in neat rows, showing off like trophies of the wealthy elite. For many, stepping foot into this place was already a dream. But for Cynthia Morgan, it was just another casual Saturday. She wanted to treat herself to a new car to celebrate closing a $100 million deal. Cynthia was no ordinary woman. She was the CEO of a tech empire dominating the market, her face once gracing the cover of Forbes magazine. Yet today, she wasn't dressed in her sharp power suit or draped in glittering diamonds. Instead, she wore simple jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and a light jacket. Hair tied back, no makeup, she looked like any other customer. Maybe even unimpressive in a place where salesmen were used to flashy billionaires flaunting their wealth. The moment she stepped through the glass doors, Cynthia caught the quick judgment in the salesman's eyes. One young man, hair slicked with too much gel and a blinding red tie, looked her up and down, then immediately turned away, his grin saved for a well-dressed couple who walked in behind her. Cynthia smirked. She was used to this. People judged based on appearances, never realizing that behind a plain white t-shirt could be financial firepower strong enough to shake Wall Street. She strolled slowly, eyeing a row of sleek black sports cars. One in particular caught her attention. Bold design, razor-sharp curves, and an engine famously nicknamed the Beast's Roar. She ran her hand gently across its surface, feeling the smooth polish. That's when a salesman's voice cut through the air, laced with disdain. "Excuse me, ma'am. This section is for serious buyers only. These cars aren't for window shopping." For a moment, the room froze. A few customers glanced over, a couple chuckled under their breath. Cynthia turned her head slowly, her eyes gleaming, lips curling into the faintest, coldest smile. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to, because deep down, she knew. This was only the opening act. The salesman's name was Bradley, a guy his co-workers jokingly nicknamed the KPI King because he only chased after flashy, well-dressed clients to hit his sales targets. To him, a black woman in jeans and a t-shirt could only be a window shopper. Bradley cleared his throat, crossed his arms, and arched his brows as if he were lecturing a clueless college freshman. "This car costs over 200 grand, you know. This isn't a rental shop. Maybe you should check out the economy models on the other side. They might be more suitable." The whole showroom seemed to chuckle in unison, though quietly. A few sly glances, a few whispers. A woman in a designer dress smirked and whispered to her husband, "Someone like her, wanting a sports car?" Please, Cynthia heard it all. Not a single word escaped her ears, yet her heart didn't budge an inch. Instead of anger, she studied Bradley like one might study a clown at the circus, amusing, pitiful, and loud. She gave a small smile and asked in a calm voice, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Did you just suggest I should go look at the economy section?" Bradley inhaled deeply, thinking he was about to show her the ropes. "Yes, exactly. I don't want to waste your time or have you feel disappointed when you see the actual price." Cynthia laughed. Her laughter echoed through the space like a slap to his arrogance. She circled the sports car slowly, hand still brushing the sleek hood. Then she turned back, her eyes gleaming with challenge. "Interesting. You know, sometimes what you think you see is only the surface. And the surface often fools the shallow." The air went silent. A few salespeople exchanged glances, confused, curious. No one had expected this simply dressed woman to clap back so boldly. Bradley's face flushed slightly, as he forced a smile, trying to mask his discomfort, but his contempt only grew more obvious. Fine then. If you really want, I'll let you test sit it. But remember, not everyone gets to sit behind the wheel of a $200,000 beast. Cynthia smiled again. But this time her smile carried a dangerous calm, because she knew just a few more minutes and the tables would turn completely. Bradley strutted to his desk, grabbed a set of keys, and dangled them in the air like he was putting on a show. Narrowing his eyes at Cynthia, he smirked. All right then. But let me warn you, if you scratch even the tiniest mark, you're paying for it. A ripple of chuckles spread through the showroom. It felt like a stage play where Cynthia was cast as the poor outsider. She stepped forward and opened the car door with slow, graceful movements. The instant it opened, the rich scent of genuine leather and fresh metal filled the air, drawing subtle admiration from nearby customers. Yet Bradley stood there with arms crossed, his mocking smile glued to his face. Careful, he sneered. These leather seats cost more than your car. Sliding into the driver's seat, Cynthia rested her hands on the wheel. For a moment, exhilaration surged through her, not because she'd never touched a luxury car before, far from it, but because she was savoring every second of this performance. She turned the key. The engine roared to life, its beastly growl reverberating through the showroom, drowning out the laughter from moments ago. Some customers even flinched in surprise. Bradley hesitated for a split second, though he quickly masked it with forced calm. Sounds impressive, sure, but, he shrugged, not everyone who sits there can actually afford to drive it out of here. Cynthia glanced at him, her eyes gleaming with mockery. Interesting. I wonder if today I decided not just to buy this car, but the entire row of cars, would you still keep that tone? Her words hit like a bomb. The showroom fell silent. Curious stares turned into wide-eyed disbelief. Some people laughed awkwardly, assuming she was joking. But there was something in the way Cynthia leaned back in that seat, in the unwavering confidence of her smile that made it impossible to dismiss. Bradley burst out laughing. The whole showroom? Do you have any idea these are limited editions? If you're going to dream, at least make it believable. Cynthia simply smiled, her eyes glowing. And in that gaze, a silent promise was made. The real show was yet to come. The atmosphere in the showroom now felt like a play reaching its climax. Every eye was fixed on Cynthia and Bradley. On one side, the arrogant salesman, convinced he was in control. On the other, the simply dressed black woman, sitting behind the wheel of a $200,000 car with calmness that unsettled the room. Cynthia tilted her head, adjusted the rearview mirror, and suddenly chuckled softly. Her laugh wasn't loud, but it cut through the room, silencing everyone. You're right about one thing, Bradley. Not everyone belongs in this seat, but what you've forgotten is that sometimes the least flashy person holds the greatest power. Bradley rolled his eyes and sneered. Sure. Let me guess. You're about to tell me you're some billionaire CEO? He drawled, prompting a few customers to laugh. Cynthia slowly opened her small black handbag, pulled out the latest smartphone, tapped a few times, and placed it on the dashboard. The screen lit up with her bank balance, numbers that dwarfed the value of the entire showroom. Rows of digits and USD symbols left more than a few people gasping. Oh, my apologies, she said casually, as if talking about the weather. I just checked. Looks like this balance is more than enough to cover your imagination. The showroom erupted in silence. Whispers died instantly, replaced by stunned disbelief. Several staff members froze, while Bradley stood there slack-jawed, utterly speechless. Cynthia rose from the driver's seat, shut the car door, and walked up to him. Leaning in just slightly, she lowered her voice so only he could hear. The question isn't whether I can buy it. The real question is how much you've just lost because of your shallow judgment. She smiled, turned, and strode toward the reception desk, leaving Bradley drowning in his humiliation. And that was the moment the real earthquake inside this showroom began. The entire showroom sank into a heavy silence after Cynthia's words. Eyes that had once brimmed with contempt now shifted to shock, and even a hint of fear. A few customers straightened their posture nervously, as if afraid of being swept up in a storm they hadn't seen coming. Cynthia walked calmly to the front desk. The young receptionist, busy typing moments before, looked up, startled to see Cynthia smiling politely. "Hello. I'd like to see the dealership manager. Please call him down immediately." Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp and commanding. Everyone in the room heard it, and the atmosphere changed instantly. The receptionist stammered slightly, then hurriedly picked up the phone. Bradley stood frozen, his face flushing crimson. He forced a laugh, stuttering, You don't need to make this a big deal. I was just—" Cynthia turned her head, cutting him off with a glance sharp enough to slice. "You had your chance, and you threw it away." Minutes later, footsteps echoed down the stairs. A middle-aged man in a sharp black suit appeared. Mr. Peterson, the general manager of the dealership, a man known for being strict yet seasoned. He adjusted his tie as his eyes scanned the tense scene below. "What's going on here?" His voice was deep, steady. Cynthia stepped forward, extending her hand gracefully. "Good afternoon. I'm Cynthia Morgan. I want to purchase every car on display here today. But before we discuss details, I think you should know how one of your employees just treated me." Her words dropped like thunder. The entire showroom froze. Bradley's body stiffened, his face drained of color. Mr. Peterson's brow furrowed, and he immediately swung his cold, piercing gaze at Bradley. "What exactly did you just say to Mrs. Morgan?" Customers, staff, even the nearby security guards held their breath. No one dared to make a sound. And Cynthia? She stood there, arms crossed, smiling with quiet confidence, like a queen who had just placed her winning piece on the board. Bradley swallowed hard, feeling his heart pounding in his throat. What had once been his stage to show off had suddenly turned into a courtroom, and he was the defendant. Mr. Peterson crossed his arms, voice cold and sharp. "Bradley, what exactly did you say to Mrs. Morgan?" Bradley stammered, eyes darting around as if searching for a lifeline. I thought she wasn't really interested in the premium models. I was only trying to save her time." A murmur rippled through the showroom. A few customers smirked knowingly. Everyone had seen Bradley's disdain from the very first glance. Cynthia stood tall, her eyes bright yet calm. She didn't need to shout or rage. Just a gentle smile and a single sentence flipped the room upside down. "He told me I should look at the economy cars, because this one was far out of my league." The air grew heavy, as though everyone was waiting for a verdict. Mr. Peterson turned to Bradley, his tone grave yet firm. "Do you even know who Mrs. Morgan is?" Bradley winced, fumbling. "She's just a customer, right?" Mr. Peterson sighed, shaking his head, before turning toward Cynthia with a completely different demeanor. Bowing slightly, his voice respectful. "Mrs. Morgan, my apologies. If I had known you were visiting, I would have personally welcomed you from the start. On behalf of the entire dealership, I sincerely apologize for my employees' lack of professionalism." Bradley froze, each word from his manager cutting into his arrogance like a blade. His face flushed, sweat beading on his forehead. Meanwhile, the other customers widened their eyes in shock, whispering as they recognized the name Morgan, a name tied to international headlines and $100 million deals. Cynthia smiled, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "It's all right. I've grown used to being underestimated because of appearances, but I also believe these moments give us a choice, either learn to look deeper or forever miss the opportunity." Her words weren't just aimed at Bradley. They echoed across the room, landing like a lesson for everyone present. The tension in the showroom was thick enough to slice. Everyone was waiting to see what Cynthia would do next. She took her time, strolling leisurely around the gleaming cars as though she were picking fruit at a market. Stopping in front of a luxury SUV, she tapped the hood lightly, then turned to Mr. Peterson. "Mr. Peterson, I'd like to make a special deal. I'm not just interested in this SUV or the sports car from earlier. I want to buy every car on display in this showroom today." The room erupted like thunder. Some customers gasped, jaws dropping. A few staff members nearly dropped the papers in their hands. No one could believe what they'd just heard. Bradley almost buckled, stammering, Every car? You mean all of them? But there are over 20 cars here. The total value must be—" Roughly over $10 million, Cynthia interrupted calmly, her tone chilling in its certainty. Yes, I know. And I can pay in full, right now. Mr. Peterson froze for a split second, but quickly regained composure. A seasoned manager, he knew a golden opportunity when it stared him in the face. He nodded respectfully. Mrs. Morgan, if that is your wish, I will have the contracts prepared immediately. And of course you will receive our absolute best terms. Cynthia smiled. But instead of agreeing right away, she turned toward Bradley, the salesman now pale as paper, frozen in place. She held his gaze for a long moment before speaking slowly, each word cutting deep. Do you remember what you told me earlier? These cars aren't for window shopping. Well then, open your eyes wide. Because today, you're going to watch me buy them all. Scattered applause broke out among a few customers. A rare moment in a car dealership where business turned into a spectacle, one that left everyone deeply satisfied. Bradley dropped his head, too ashamed to speak. And Cynthia? She stood tall, unshakable, a living reminder of one timeless truth. Never underestimate someone just because they look ordinary. A team of staff rushed to prepare the contracts. At the central lounge table, crisp sheets of paper were spread out, colossal numbers filling the page under Mr. Peterson's steady pen. The air was so tense, it felt like no one dared to breathe. Cynthia sat back in the leather chair, legs crossed, her demeanor calm, as though she were merely signing off on routine meeting notes. When a staff member handed her the pen, she twirled it lightly in her fingers, then signed with swift, decisive strokes. Each mark of ink was like a slap across Bradley's arrogance. Done, she said, her voice calm yet commanding. Mr. Peterson immediately rose, bowing deeply. On behalf of the entire dealership, thank you. Mrs. Morgan, this is one of the largest transactions we have ever had. Around them, customers whispered in awe, some discreetly pulling out their phones to capture the scene. A few even broke into applause, as if they had just witnessed a live drama unfold before their eyes. Bradley, meanwhile, stood frozen, his face drained of color, sweat pouring down his temples. All his arrogance, his mockery, his smug smirk, it had all evaporated. What remained was humiliation, raw and undeniable. Cynthia rose and walked toward him. Leaning in just slightly, she whispered clearly enough for him to hear, "Next time, before you judge someone, remember this. Opportunity never comes to the shallow." Then she turned away, her heels clicking firmly against the showroom floor. Every eye followed her, not just because she had purchased the entire showroom, but because she radiated something undeniable, the authority of a true CEO. That moment closed Chapter 2, but its echoes lingered in the hearts of everyone present, for they knew this was only the beginning of a story about to erupt even further. Just hours after Cynthia signed the contracts, the once quiet dealership had become the city's hottest story. Customers who had secretly recorded the scene on their phones uploaded it to social media. Headlines screamed, "Black woman buys out entire showroom after salesman's insult." And within hours, the videos had gone viral, racking up hundreds of thousands of views. One clip of Cynthia saying, "Open your eyes wide. Today you'll watch me buy them all," spread like wildfire. The comments were relentless. "This is so satisfying." "Iconic," one user wrote. "This is the definition of real class," another chimed in. Meanwhile, back at the dealership, Bradley wanted to vanish into the floor. His co-workers eyed him with a mix of pity and disdain. In a single morning, the so-called KPI king had become the laughingstock of the entire city. As for Cynthia, she sat in her top-floor office, sipping a hot cup of coffee. On her desk, her laptop screen flashed with breaking news updates. A faint smile curled across her lips. She hadn't intended to make a spectacle out of the incident, but a part of her knew. Sometimes, moments like these become the sharpest weapons. This wasn't just a lesson for Bradley, it was a message to the world. Never underestimate someone because of their skin color or the clothes they wear. Her phone rang. Melissa, her assistant, came through the speaker. "Cynthia, CNN just called. They want to interview you about the viral story. Should I arrange it?" Cynthia leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing slightly as a soft laugh escaped her. She knew the game had just shifted. into a far bigger arena than a car dealership. Melissa quickly arranged an online interview with CNN. Within an hour, Cynthia was seated before the camera, the elegant backdrop of her CEO office glowing behind her, warm light framing her confident expression. The host smiled as the segment began. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a very special guest, Cynthia Morgan, the Black CEO who set the internet ablaze after what happened at a car dealership. Cynthia, thank you for joining us. Cynthia nodded, smiling softly. Thank you for having me. Honestly, I thought I was just going to buy a car like anyone else. I never imagined it would become a viral story. The host leaned forward, curious. Can you tell us what really happened? And why did you decide to buy the entire showroom? Cynthia arched a brow, her voice calm yet powerful. It's simple. I was underestimated because I was a black woman wearing jeans and a t-shirt. That salesman assumed I couldn't afford a luxury car. I've grown used to those looks, but this time, I wanted to show him and the world one thing. Never judge a book by its cover. As her words landed, the live stream chat exploded with hearts and comments. Legend. CEO goals. Thank you for speaking for those of us who've been looked down on. The host chuckled, asking, So, would you say this was a form of revenge? Cynthia shook her head, smiling gently yet sharply. No, it wasn't revenge. I chose to turn an insult into an opportunity. An opportunity to prove that dignity isn't in the clothes you wear or the car you drive. It's in how you handle those who doubt you. Applause erupted from the studio. Online, the interview soared to the top of trending, captivating millions. Cynthia leaned back slightly, knowing deep down, this battle was no longer about a dealership. It was becoming a symbol, a story the world was eager to hear. While Cynthia was rising as the media's darling, Bradley was living through the darkest hours of his life. Ever since he left the dealership, his phone hadn't stopped buzzing. At first, it was messages from friends. Dude, are you the salesman in that viral video? Bro, you messed up big time. Everyone's laughing at you. Then came messages from his family, his mother's shaky voice over the phone. Bradley, what happened? Why is your name all over the news like this? But the worst came from management. The very next morning, he was summoned urgently to the director's office. Mr. Peterson sat there, alongside two board members, their faces stone cold, devoid of sympathy. Bradley, Peterson began slowly, his voice heavy as iron. Do you realize that your actions not only insulted a customer, but also severely damaged the reputation of our entire dealership chain? Bradley bowed his head, hands trembling as they clenched. Sir, I didn't know who she was. Exactly! One board member cut him off, slamming the table. You didn't know who she was, yet you rushed to judge her. This isn't just a failure in salesmanship. This is a failure in character. Bradley swallowed hard, his throat dry as sand. In that moment, he realized his career had crumbled, destroyed by a few careless, arrogant words. Meanwhile, online, the hashtag #NeverJudgeABookByItsCover was exploding. Millions were sharing it, often paired with the viral image of Cynthia behind the wheel of that sports car. Every post was another nail in the coffin of Bradley's reputation. In the suffocating boardroom, Peterson's final words landed like a hammer. You are suspended indefinitely, and I'm afraid your career here is over. Bradley collapsed into his chair. Once an ambitious salesman, he had become the cautionary tale of blind arrogance, and the price he paid was far too steep. After her CNN interview, Cynthia's reputation spread like wildfire. Major outlets, from the New York Times to Forbes, ran features about her. Headlines blazed across the media. A black CEO delivers a priceless lesson at a luxury car dealership. From humiliation to inspiration, Cynthia Morgan's remarkable journey. Melissa's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Invitations to events, conferences, and international forums poured in. Some wanted her as the keynote speaker at business equality summits. Prestigious universities asked her to address their students. One evening, Cynthia sat in her penthouse apartment, gazing out at the glowing city lights. In her hands was an invitation from the United Nations to speak at the Global Diversity and Inclusion Conference. Her eyes widened slightly, then she smiled. Who would have thought a simple car-buying trip would turn into a turning point that carried her message to the entire world? For Cynthia, this wasn't just an honor, it was a responsibility. She knew she was carrying the voices of millions who had been underestimated, looked down upon, dismissed for their skin color, gender, or background. She whispered to herself, steady and resolute. All right then. If the world wants to listen, I'll speak. And this time, they'll never forget. In that moment, Cynthia Morgan, the woman once dismissed in a car dealership, stepped beyond her personal story to become a symbol. And her journey was only just beginning. On the day of the Global Diversity and Inclusion Conference, the atmosphere at the United Nations headquarters was electric. Thousands of delegates from around the world, politicians, CEOs, social activists had gathered. This year's theme was already important, but everyone knew why the event shattered viewership records: the name Cynthia Morgan. The event was broadcast live to millions worldwide. Journalists crowded the aisles, cameras flashing as they focused on the backstage door where Cynthia was preparing. Then the door opened. Cynthia stepped out with absolute confidence. She wore a pristine white business dress, accented by a simple pearl necklace. No flashy extravagance, just elegance with undeniable authority. Applause thundered across the hall. The host's voice rang out, "Please welcome the CEO, entrepreneur and global inspiration, Cynthia Morgan." Cynthia walked onto the stage, her gaze steady on the sea of faces before her. The spotlight fell across her, illuminating her composed yet fierce expression. She waited for the applause to fade, then began. "Not long ago, I only intended to buy a car. But instead of being treated like any other customer, I was dismissed, insulted, judged by nothing more than my appearance and my skin color. I chose not to respond with anger, but with action, action that forced people to open their eyes." The hall grew silent, her words echoing powerfully. She continued, "That story is not just mine. It belongs to millions, people underestimated, overlooked, dismissed. But remember this. True worth isn't in what you wear, it's in what you do." The audience erupted in applause like rolling thunder. Cameras captured tearful eyes, nodding heads, and hands clapping furiously. And this was only the beginning of a speech the world would remember for years to come. Cynthia drew a deep breath, her gaze sweeping across the vast hall. Thousands sat in silence, hanging on her every word. "That day, when I walked into the dealership," she began, her tone warm but steady, "I was simply wearing jeans and a t-shirt. To me, it was comfort, nothing more. But to the salesman, it was a reason to dismiss me. He didn't see a CEO. He didn't see a successful woman. He only saw a customer who couldn't possibly afford it." A murmur spread through the audience, as if many realized they, too, had once been victims of such shallow judgment. Cynthia paused, then smiled, soft yet unyielding. "And when I chose to buy out the entire showroom, it wasn't just a transaction. It was a message that arrogance rooted in prejudice will always lead to failure, that sometimes the very people you underestimate are the ones who change the game." The hall erupted in applause, some rising to their feet in cheers. The cameras caught the face of a young student, tears streaming down her cheeks. Perhaps because she saw her own struggle reflected in Cynthia's story. Cynthia pressed on, her voice rising, echoing through every corner. "But I don't want this story to be just about me. That dealership was merely a small symbol of something much bigger. Out there, every day, millions are underestimated because of gender, skin color, religion, or background. They are denied opportunities, mocked, overlooked, simply because others refuse to look deeper." She paused, eyes fierce, unwavering. "It's time we change that. It's time we build a world where a person's worth isn't judged by shallow eyes, but by their abilities, their character, and their resilience." The entire hall rose to its feet. Thunderous applause roared across the UN auditorium. In that moment, Cynthia was no longer just a CEO. She was the living symbol of a global movement. Cynthia's speech ended, but its echoes did not. That very evening, dozens of international networks replayed it in full, their headlines blazing across the screen. The speech that shook the United Nations. BBC, Black woman. CEO turns insult into global message. The Guardian, Cynthia Morgan. When a personal story sparks a social movement. The Washington Post. Social media exploded. Hashtags, True Worth and Never Judge a Book by Its cover climbed to the very top of global trends. Millions shared Cynthia's words, often paired with their own personal stories of being overlooked or dismissed. Many called her the voice of the underestimated. Meanwhile, Melissa, Cynthia's assistant, was drowning in calls and emails. Multinational corporations sent partnership offers, asking Cynthia to be the face of global equality campaigns. A luxury car brand even proposed an exclusive endorsement deal, as if to redeem an industry long criticized for subtle discrimination. Cynthia only smiled as Melissa read off the endless list of invitations. She knew this was a golden moment to leverage media power, but she also knew not every invitation came from genuine values. In a closed meeting with her advisors, Cynthia spoke firmly. "We don't need them all. We choose only the partners who truly share our values and vision. I will not let my message be reduced to an empty slogan for someone else's profit." Her team nodded, their eyes filled with respect. In that moment, Cynthia Morgan was no longer just a CEO. She was a moral leader, one who understood the weight of her voice and how to turn it into real change. Cynthia's success burned like a blazing fire, but every fire casts shadows. As the world celebrated her, opposing voices began to rise. Some TV pundits scoffed, "She just got lucky. Who spends millions on cars just to teach a salesman a lesson? That's not empowerment, it's vanity." On social media, new hashtags emerged, dripping with criticism. Instead of charity, "She blew millions on cars. Is this really inspiration or just self-promotion?" Bradley, the man who had lost his job, suddenly appeared on a local talk show, trying to justify himself. His voice cracked as he said, "I admit I was wrong. But she destroyed my entire career in one day. Is it fair that one mistake gets turned into a public execution?" The clip went viral, sparking debate. Some began to wonder, had Cynthia gone too far? In her office, Melissa set an iPad on the table, concern written all over her face. "Cynthia, do you want to respond? Maybe we should issue a statement, clarify things more." Cynthia sat quietly, gazing out the window at the glittering city lights. She knew this was inevitable. The higher you stand, the bigger a target you become. She took a slow sip of coffee, then spoke firmly. "There's no need to explain to those who choose to believe the worst. Our job is to keep creating real value. The truth will speak for itself." Melissa nodded softly, her admiration for Cynthia deepening. Outside, the debates raged on. But in that moment, Cynthia knew this challenge would not break her. It would only make her fire burn brighter. After the wave of controversy, Cynthia knew she needed a strategic move. Not to fight back against critics, but to prove that her true power didn't lie in a flashy car purchase. It lay in what she chose to do afterward. That morning, she called a meeting with her top advisors and executives. On the table sat thick binders outlining a new plan. Cynthia looked around, her eyes serious yet determined. "We're establishing the True Worth Foundation. Its mission will be to support those who've been denied opportunities because of prejudice. I want scholarships for underprivileged students, seed funding for minority entrepreneurs, and vocational training programs so everyone has a chance to prove their true worth." The room went silent for a beat, then erupted in applause. One finance director spoke, voice choked with emotion. "Cynthia, this is the best answer to every doubt out there." Within the week, Cynthia announced the foundation live on television. She appeared not in a lavish gown, but in a simple blouse, standing among a group of young students. Her voice was warm, clear, resolute. "That day, I bought out a showroom to send a message. But today I want to do more. I want to open doors for those who've had them slammed shut, simply because others failed to see their potential." News of the True Worth Foundation spread like wildfire. New headlines appeared. From car dealership to global mission, Cynthia Morgan launches True Worth Foundation. CEO's bold move silences critics with action. Not words, And for the first time since the controversy, social media spoke with one united voice. Cynthia wasn't just a symbol, she was a leader of action. On the official launch day of the True Worth Foundation, Cynthia chose a modest community center in the suburbs, not a five-star hotel or a grand ballroom, but a simple hall with rows of plastic chairs, because it was here, in this humble place, that her message would truly resonate. As Cynthia entered, applause thundered. Dozens of young students, some wearing worn-out uniforms, their eyes shining with hope. A slender, dark-skinned girl stood up, her voice trembling. "My name is Alicia. I've always dreamed of studying computer engineering, but my family can't afford it. The True Worth Scholarship, it could change my life. Thank you. Thank you for believing in us." Her voice cracked, tears rolling down her cheeks. The entire room was moved. Cynthia walked over, wrapped the girl in a gentle embrace, and whispered, "You don't need to thank me. All you need to do is show the world your true talent." Later, a young man named David, the son of immigrant parents, stepped forward. He shared how he had once been denied a business loan simply because of his foreign surname. "But with support from True Worth, I can finally start my small company, and one day I hope to give back to people like me." Cynthia smiled, her eyes shimmering. That is the circle of opportunity. When you're given a chance, you gain the power to pass it on. The media present captured powerful images, Cynthia holding the hands of these young people, her smile genuine, her eyes bright. Those images spread rapidly, stronger than any speech. A powerful CEO, yet humble enough to lift others up. And in that moment, Cynthia realized, the dealership was only the beginning. This was the legacy she truly wanted to leave behind. As the True Worth Foundation grew in influence, Cynthia's name was everywhere. Millions hailed her as a symbol. But not everyone celebrated. In a closed boardroom of America's largest car manufacturer, powerful executives sat around a long table. On the big screen, images of Cynthia hugging students and speaking at the UN kept flashing. One executive scowled, his voice sharp. "She's making a mockery of our entire industry. People are starting to question how we treat customers. That dealership incident should have faded, but thanks to her, it's become a global movement." Another slammed the table. "We can't let one individual shake the image of our industry. If she continues, consumers will eventually turn against us." The room fell silent until the chairman, a silver-haired man, spoke gravely. "Then we find a way to strip Cynthia Morgan of her credibility. If we can't defeat her message, we attack her character." A shadowy plan began to unfold. Rumors about her private life, anonymous op-eds, even fabricated financial scandals. It would be a coordinated smear campaign. Meanwhile, Cynthia remained unaware of the storm brewing. She was busy with the True Worth Foundation, meeting students, awarding scholarships, signing startup grants. One evening, Melissa rushed into her office, holding the latest newspaper, her face tense. "Cynthia, we have a problem. Some outlets are publishing claims that you're using the True Worth Foundation for personal profit. It's obviously false, but if this spreads, it could be dangerous." Cynthia looked up, her eyes darkening for a moment. She knew. It was time to face a new kind of battle, not in a dealership, not on a UN stage, but on the ruthless battlefield of media and power. The next morning, headlines screamed across major outlets. Cynthia Morgan accused of misusing charity funds. On television, pundits tore into her, despite offering no real evidence. Melissa's voice was anxious. "Cynthia, if we stay silent, the public might turn. But if we respond the wrong way, they'll say we're defensive." Cynthia crossed her arms, her eyes sharp as blades. "Then we won't defend. We'll attack with the truth." That afternoon, she called a massive press conference at company headquarters. Hundreds of reporters packed the hall, cameras flashing nonstop. Cynthia walked out calmly, holding a thick stack of documents. She began, "Rumors claim I've used the True Worth Foundation for personal gain. I am not here to explain. I am here to show you the truth." She raised the documents high. "These are our full financial reports, audited by 3 independent international firms. Every figure is public, transparent. The True Worth Foundation has never and will never serve my personal interest. On the giant screen behind her, numbers lit up, scholarships granted, startups funded, smiling young faces from community projects. The room fell silent. Reporters hammered furiously at their keyboards. One finally stood and asked, "But Mrs. Morgan, do you admit that buying out an entire showroom was showboating?" Cynthia smiled, eyes gleaming like steel. "I wasn't showboating. I was sending a message. And today, when I see these numbers, these lives changed, I know that message worked. If anyone still wants to call it showboating, then I am proud to have shown off real value." Applause broke out, first scattered, then rolling through the hall like thunder. The hashtag truth with Cynthia shot to the top of trending. Cynthia nodded slightly. Deep down, she knew this media war was far from over. But today, she had turned the storm into a declaration. Nothing is stronger than the truth. The press conference had temporarily silenced the critics, but Cynthia knew the ones behind it weren't finished. And she wasn't going to sit back and wait. 3 days later, in a closed-door meeting with her legal team, Melissa placed a thick folder on the table. Her tone was grave. "We investigated. The source of the rumors, the fabricated articles, all trace back to one place, Titan Motors." The room grew heavy. Titan Motors, the industry giant dominating the automotive world for decades. They had money, influence, and deep political ties. Cynthia stayed silent for a moment, her eyes narrowing, sharp as a blade. "No surprise. I suspected it from the moment this storm began. They're afraid my story will crack the glossy mask they hide behind." One of the lawyers spoke. "We have proof Titan Motors funded at least 3 outlets that spread the false claims. If we take them to court, their credibility will be shattered. But," he hesitated, "they'll hit back hard. This will be a brutal, costly battle." Cynthia's lips curved into a cold smile. "Then brutal it is. This isn't just about defending my name. It's about exposing them for what they really are." Melissa looked at her, a mix of worry and admiration in her eyes. She knew this decision meant Cynthia was stepping into the biggest fight of her career, a fight where both power and reputation would be on the line. That night, alone in her office, Cynthia gazed out at the glittering city lights. She whispered to herself, "You picked the wrong opponent. This isn't about a car dealership anymore. This is a war for the truth." Just days after Cynthia's legal team uncovered the trail, Titan Motors struck back. On national television, a massive ad campaign launched, sleek commercials, their CEO speaking before crowds of thousands, plastered with the slogan, "Titan Motors, transparent, fair, leading the industry." At the same time, a wave of articles hit the press, accusing Cynthia of using the media for self-promotion and turning a personal incident into a weapon for competition. Some even cited anonymous sources claiming the Trueworth Foundation was just a front for Cynthia's political ambitions. Melissa slammed a newspaper down in frustration. "This is outrageous. They're trying to paint you as someone exploiting kindness for power." But Cynthia stayed calm. She lifted her coffee cup, took a slow sip, then replied, "I expected this. They want to turn the story into a PR war, where money and advertising bury the truth." One advisor suggested, "We could hit back now. File the lawsuit or release the evidence that Titan Motors funded those tabloids." Cynthia shook her head. "Not yet. If we strike too early, it'll look like panic. I want them to believe they're winning. When their arrogance peaks, that's when we strike." Melissa frowned. "So what do we do in the meantime?" Cynthia set her cup down, her eyes gleaming. "We don't just defend, we reframe the battlefield. I'm going to host an international forum, bringing together leaders, scholars, and those who face discrimination. There, I'll prove this isn't a fight between me and Titan Motors. It's a fight between truth and prejudice." The room grew tense, but eyes lit up all around. They knew Cynthia wasn't just defending her name. She was elevating the battle to an entirely new level. A week later, Cynthia held a press conference at New York's largest convention center. The hall was packed with reporters, cameras flashing as they zoomed in on the podium. Cynthia appeared in a sharp black suit, her stride firm and commanding. She smiled, greeted the audience, then announced, "Today, I am proud to unveil a new initiative, the Global Forum on True Worth. This will be a gathering of business leaders, policymakers, scholars, and everyday people who've been underestimated or discriminated against to discuss how we can build a fairer world. The hall erupted in applause. Cynthia continued, "This is no longer about a single car dealership. This is about millions of lives. And I believe we can turn humiliation into strength, injustice into change." News spread worldwide instantly. CNN called it a movement that could reshape global business culture. Forbes wrote, "Cynthia Morgan is transforming a personal story into a global forum, a bold and brilliant move." Meanwhile, inside Titan Motors headquarters, tension filled the boardroom. Executives watched the press conference on a giant screen. One muttered under his breath, She's flipped the battlefield. This isn't just media anymore. This is politics. This is global." The Titan Motors chairman slammed his fist on the table. "We cannot let her control the narrative. If this forum succeeds, Titan Motors will become the symbol of everything wrong with this industry." Another executive asked nervously, "So what do we do?" The chairman closed his eyes, his voice low and grim. "Then we stop Cynthia Morgan. At any cost." While dark forces plotted in secrecy, Cynthia calmly prepared for her global event, ready to step forward not just as a CEO, but as the leader of a new movement. As the Global Forum on True Worth drew closer, the pressure mounted on both sides. Cynthia's team worked tirelessly on preparations, while Titan Motors quietly executed its sabotage plan. One night, Melissa burst into Cynthia's office, pale and shaken. "Cynthia, we've got a problem. They've released fake news online, claiming the forum is just a stunt for you to run for office. Dozens of bot accounts are spreading doctored clips, editing your speeches to make you sound arrogant, twisting your words completely." Cynthia took the iPad, watching the manipulated videos. In them, her image was recast as a boastful CEO instead of an inspirational leader. The comments below were on fire, praise and hate clashing in a digital storm. An advisor spoke urgently. "We need to counter this immediately. Release proof that Titan Motors is behind it. Otherwise, they'll destroy the forum's credibility before it even begins." Cynthia set the iPad down, her eyes cold but her smile steady. "No, if we only chase fires, they'll just light new ones. I want a solution that makes them never dare to lie again." Melissa asked nervously, "So what's your plan?" Cynthia rose, stepping to the wide glass window overlooking the glowing city. Her voice rang out, resolute. "On the opening day of the forum, I will reveal every piece of evidence tying Titan Motors to this smear campaign. And I won't do it in a courtroom. I'll do it before the entire world." The room buzzed with shock. Faces turned, tense yet exhilarated. This wasn't defense anymore. This was an offensive strike bold enough to crush Titan Motors on the grandest stage. Outside, Titan Motors had no idea their rival wasn't just defending. Cynthia Morgan was preparing to turn the global forum into a battlefield where truth would obliterate lies. On the opening day of the forum, New York roared with energy. Over 10,000 people filled the hall. Millions tuned in via broadcast and live stream. Flags of dozens of nations hung high. This wasn't just an event. It was history in the making. Cynthia strode onto the stage in a simple navy blue suit, her gaze sharp, her posture commanding. As the applause faded, she smiled softly and began, "We are here today not to talk about me, not to talk about a car dealership. We are here to talk about true worth, something every single person in this room, and beyond it, deserves to be recognized for." The crowd thundered with applause. But Cynthia's voice lowered, pulling the audience closer into her gravity. "In recent weeks, I and the True Worth Foundation have become targets of a smear campaign. They claimed we profited, that we sought only fame. But today, at this forum, I will show you the truth." The hall fell silent. Cynthia raised her hand. The massive LED screen behind her flickered on. Documents appeared, leaked emails, secret sponsorship contracts, financial transfers, all pointing unmistakably to Titan Motors. A wave of shock rippled through the audience. Cameras zoomed in on stunned reporters, while the glow of countless phones lit up as attendees recorded every detail. Cynthia's voice rang out, firm and unwavering. They tried to paint me as a fraud. But the truth is, they are afraid. Afraid of a movement awakening. Afraid the world is realizing that arrogance and prejudice have no place anymore. And today, I declare, we will not back down. The hall erupted. Applause boomed like thunder. People leapt to their feet, cheering, some even in tears. The hashtags, #TrueWorth Forum and Cynthia Via's Titan, shot straight to the top of global trends. Meanwhile, at Titan Motors headquarters, executives sat frozen, their faces pale. One muttered under his breath, She's turned us into criminals before the entire world. But Cynthia stood tall, radiant, a warrior on the global stage, and the battle had only just begun. Right after her speech, global media exploded. CNN called it a historic moment in modern business. The New York Times splashed the headline, "Cynthia Morgan exposes Titan Motors to the world." On social media, millions shared the video, comments flooding in. "This is true courage. Respect, Cynthia. Never seen a CEO take on a corporate giant like this." Cynthia's Titan, the justice battle we all needed. Meanwhile, at Titan Motors headquarters, chaos reigned. The board scrambled in emergency meetings, phones ringing nonstop with calls from shareholders, customers, and politicians. The CFO shouted, "Our stock is in free fall. We've lost over 15% of our market value this morning alone." The head of marketing trembled. Over 20,000 customers have canceled their orders. Strategic partners are demanding immediate explanations. If this continues, we'll bleed market share to competitors. The Titan chairman, pale and shaken, muttered only one line. She struck right at our heart. While Titan Motors floundered, Cynthia walked off the stage through a sea of applause and flashing cameras. Yet instead of boasting, she simply smiled calmly and said, "This is not my victory. This is the victory of truth." That single line was etched across thousands of articles, millions of tweets, becoming the rallying cry of a movement. Cynthia knew Titan Motors wouldn't surrender so easily. But now, the world was on her side, and once the truth had been unleashed, no power could stop the wave rising behind her. After the devastating blow from the forum, Titan Motors refused to back down. They launched a wave of press releases accusing Cynthia of self-promotion and claiming the leaked documents were fabricated. They even hired a powerhouse legal team, threatening to sue Cynthia for defamation. On TV, the narrative split. Supporters hailed Cynthia as the great whistleblower. Critics tried to sow doubt, asking, "Can one woman really take on an entire corporate giant?" Melissa monitored the reports anxiously. "Cynthia, they're trying to plant seeds of doubt. If we don't handle this carefully, public opinion could splinter." Cynthia nodded quietly. She knew Titan Motors was gambling desperately. Either they discredit her, or they collapse. And she had no intention of letting them win. The very next day, Cynthia appeared in a live primetime interview. The host pressed hard. "Some say you staged all of this to boost your profile. How do you respond?" Cynthia looked straight into the camera, her voice steady and strong. "I don't need to stage anything to be known. I was already a CEO before the dealership incident, but I chose not to stay silent, because silence means accepting injustice. And if speaking out puts me against Titan Motors, then so be it. I am ready." The moment the words left her lips, screens lit up worldwide. The hashtag, #OurStandWithCynthia, shot to the top of global trends. The more Titan Motors raged, the calmer and stronger Cynthia appeared. She wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was showing the world that a true leader doesn't flinch in the storm. They stand tall and lead others toward the truth. After the devastating blow from the forum, Titan Motors refused to back down. They launched a wave of press releases accusing Cynthia of self-promotion and claiming the leaked documents were fabricated. They even hired a powerhouse legal team, threatening to sue Cynthia for defamation. On TV, the narrative split. Supporters hailed Cynthia as the great whistleblower. Critics tried to sow doubt, asking, Can one woman really take on an entire corporate giant? Melissa monitored the reports anxiously. Cynthia, they're trying to plant seeds of doubt. If we don't handle this carefully, public opinion could splinter. Cynthia nodded quietly. She knew Titan Motors was gambling desperately. Either they discredit her, or they collapse. And she had no intention of letting them win. The very next day, Cynthia appeared in a live primetime interview. The host pressed hard. Some say you staged all of this to boost your profile. How do you respond? Cynthia looked straight into the camera, her voice steady and strong. I don't need to stage anything to be known. I was already a CEO before the dealership incident, but I chose not to stay silent, because silence means accepting injustice. And if speaking out puts me against Titan Motors, then so be it. I am ready. The moment the words left her lips, screens lit up worldwide. The hashtag, #OurStandWithCynthia, shot to the top of global trends. The more Titan Motors raged, the calmer and stronger Cynthia appeared. She wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was showing the world that a true leader doesn't flinch in the storm. They stand tall and lead others toward the truth. After the devastating blow from the forum, Titan Motors refused to back down. They launched a wave of press releases, accusing Cynthia of self-promotion and claiming the leaked documents were fabricated. They even hired a powerhouse legal team, threatening to sue Cynthia for defamation. On TV, the narrative split. Supporters hailed Cynthia as the great whistleblower. Critics tried to sow doubt, asking, can one woman really take on an entire corporate giant? Melissa monitored the reports anxiously. Cynthia, they're trying to plant seeds of doubt. If we don't handle this carefully, public opinion could splinter. Cynthia nodded quietly. She knew Titan Motors was gambling desperately. Either they discredit her or they collapse. And she had no intention of letting them win. The very next day, Cynthia appeared in a live primetime interview. The host pressed hard. Some say you staged all of this to boost your profile. How do you respond? Cynthia looked straight into the camera, her voice steady and strong. I don't need to stage anything to be known. I was already a CEO before the dealership incident, but I chose not to stay silent, because silence means accepting injustice. And if speaking out puts me against Titan Motors, then so be it. I am ready. The moment the words left her lips, screens lit up worldwide. The hashtag, #StandWithCynthia, shot to the top of global trends. The more Titan Motors raged, the calmer and stronger Cynthia appeared. She wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was showing the world that a true leader doesn't flinch in the storm. They stand tall and lead others toward the truth. The devastating blow from the forum, Titan Motors refused to back down. They launched a wave of press releases, accusing Cynthia of self-promotion and claiming the leaked documents were fabricated. They even hired a powerhouse legal team, threatening to sue Cynthia for defamation. On TV, the narrative split. Supporters hailed Cynthia as the great whistleblower. Critics tried to sow doubt, asking, can one woman really take on an entire corporate giant? Melissa monitored the reports anxiously. Cynthia, they're trying to plant seeds of doubt. If we don't handle this carefully, public opinion could splinter. Cynthia nodded quietly. She knew Titan Motors was gambling desperately. Either they discredit her or they collapse. And she had no intention of letting them win. The very next day, Cynthia appeared in a live primetime interview. The host pressed hard. Some say you staged all of this to boost your profile. How do you respond? Cynthia looked straight into the camera, her voice steady and strong. I don't need to stage anything to be known. I was already a CEO before the dealership incident, but I chose not to stay silent, because silence means accepting injustice. And if speaking out puts me against Titan Motors, then so be it. I am ready. The moment the words left her lips, screens lit up worldwide. The hashtag, #StandWithCynthia, shot to the top of global trends. The more Titan Motors raged, the calmer and stronger Cynthia appeared. She wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was showing the world that a true leader doesn't flinch in the storm. They stand tall and lead others toward the truth. That night, after a long day visiting students and young entrepreneurs, Cynthia returned to her penthouse. The city of New York glittered below, every light like a star in the urban sky. She poured herself a glass of wine and stepped out onto the balcony, letting the night breeze brush against her hair. In that quiet moment, she allowed herself to reflect on the journey she had just lived through, only months ago. She was just a customer walking into a dealership to buy a car, only to be humiliated by a salesman's prejudice. What seemed like a small insult had become a tidal wave, sweeping her into battle with a corporate giant. Cynthia took a sip of wine and smiled. Not a proud smile, but a gentle one. She whispered to herself, "In the end, what kept me standing wasn't money nor power. It was the belief that truth always wins." On the coffee table inside lay a framed photo of her with Alicia and David. They represented thousands of others whose lives had been lifted by the True Worth Foundation. Cynthia reached out, touching the frame softly, her eyes glowing with deep emotion. She knew Titan Motors would one day be remembered only as a cautionary tale of arrogance. But True Worth and the lives it touched would live on, growing stronger every day. In the stillness, Cynthia closed her eyes. The city lights blended with the rhythm of her calm heartbeat, a reminder that this journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. One morning, Cynthia stood at a modest podium in a small community event. It wasn't the United Nations, nor a global conference, just an old-school hall filled with a few hundred locals. But to Cynthia, it was the most meaningful moment of all. She looked out at the diverse faces, students, workers, single mothers, people who had once been denied opportunities, but now sat here with heads held high, carrying new hope. Cynthia smiled, her voice warm yet resolute. "I've walked a long journey, one that began on a very ordinary day, a day I only meant to buy a car. But that day, an insult forced me to choose, to stay silent or to speak up. I chose to speak, and from there together we wrote a story that went far beyond a dealership, far beyond a corporation." She paused, her eyes glowing with conviction. "I want you to remember this. Every person in this room carries true worth. Don't let anyone tell you you're not good enough, not worthy, and most importantly, never doubt yourself." Applause roared. Some wiped away tears. Cynthia nodded softly, continuing, "I don't know what challenges tomorrow will bring. But I do know this, if we stand together, we can turn even the harshest prejudice into power. And I promise, I will keep fighting until true worth is recognized everywhere." As she stepped down, countless hands reached out to grasp hers. It was no longer applause for a CEO. It was faith in a person, living proof that truth and dignity will always prevail. Outside, the morning sun rose, bright, fierce, unshakable. Just like Cynthia's journey, not an ending, but the opening of a new chapter for a better future.